Hello, everyone. How is it today? Let me move the mic back a tad so it's out of my way. So I bought this recently, and it has all four of um, the characters or uh, animals that represent the gospel with the Latin names, and then the cross is basically just glass. But I really liked it because I'm not somebody to wear jewelry, but I saw this and I was like, I actually really like that. And especially the thing I don't like about jewelry is, let's say these were diamonds or whatever. If they happen to fall out, I would be so mad. Um, so the fact that it's glass, like I feel fine about that. Then it's more about the looks or the aesthetic than anything else. So yeah, I've been wearing this lately, except for when I go run. And then just this icon bracelet, which normally in previous years I would have looked at that and been like, wood bracelet. That's kind of feminine, which that might be true, but I like the fact that it has the icons on it. So anytime you just look at your wrist and you're like, oh, there you go, Mary, Jesus, Christmas tree. Um, yeah, and at the same time, you're lackadaisically evangelizing because other people are going to see it, and the icons are so small that you can't really tell what they are, especially if somebody's like, let's say 5 feet away. But I'm sure at some point it will garner some sort of reaction or interest. And at that point, it's so cheap that I could just take it off and be like, "Oh, you want to have it?" And then uh, I have another one at home. Anyways, we are reading Dante, the Divine Comedy. We read the first part 2 days ago, and today we will read the next part. So let me bring up the screen and we'll try to figure out where we're at. Let me close all these other screens. So this is the poetry and translation website. And I think because Dante's comedy here is considered poetry, which I would say it is written in a very uh, ear-pleasing style, if that makes sense. And I also like it because it has Gustav's Doors illustrations that accompany it. So this is like a well put together translation on this website. And so I would probably read this every single time I want to. So I think we are. So we started off reading this one, I believe, the first one, and we'll try to read this. Last time it took about an hour, so I need to get started soon. But we'll go on from there. And there's 3 books, right? So if we theoretically takes an hour to read each one, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 10 hours. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 15 hours. So that's theoretically, if I read it Monday through Friday, 3 weeks of reading. Anyways, let's click on this and we'll just continue right on. This actually looks like it's way longer than the previous, but we'll see. I was mostly going over all that stuff because I wanted to and I forgot. So now I'm doing it live. Okay. I say, pursuing my theme, that long before we reach the base of the high tower, our eyes look upwards to its summit, because we saw 2 beacon flames set there, and another from so far away that the eye could scarcely see it, gave a signal in return. And I turned to the front of all knowledge and asked, what does it say? And what does the other light reply? And who has made the signal? And he to me, already you can see what is expected, coming over the foul waters, if the marsh vapors do not hide it from you. No bowstring ever shot an arrow that flew through the air so quickly as the little boat that I saw coming towards us through the waves under the control of the single steer ship, who cried, "Are you here now, fierce spirit?" My master said, Phlegius, Phlegius, this time you cry in vain. You shall not keep us longer than it takes us to pass the march. Phlegius, in his growing anger, was like someone who listens to some great wrong done him and then fills with resentment. My guide climbed down into the boat and then made me board after him. It only sank in the water when I was in. As soon as my guide and I were in the craft, its prow went forward, plowing deeper through the water than it does carrying others. I don't want to click it because that made it like mess up last time. While we were running through the dead channel, one rose up in front of me, covered with mud, and said, "Who are you? That came before your time?" And I to him, "If I come, I do not stay here, but who are you? Who who are so mired?" He answered, "You see that I am one who weeps." And I to him, "Cursed spirit, remain weeping and in sorrow, for I know you, muddy as you are." Then he stretched both hands out to the boat, at which the cautious master pushed him off, saying, "Away there with the other dogs." Then he put his arms around my neck, kissed my face, and said, "Blessed be she who bore you, soul, who are rightly indignant. He was an arrogant spirit in your world. There is nothing good with which to arbor his memory. So his furious shade is here. How many up there think themselves mighty kings that will lie here like pigs in mire, leaving behind them dire condemnation?" And I, master, I would be glad to see him doused in this swill before we quit the lake. And he to me, "You will be satisfied before the shore is visible to you. It is right that your wish should be gratified." Not long after this, I saw the muddy people make such a rending of him that I still give God thanks and praise for it. All shouted at Filippo Argitetti. That fierce Florentine spirit turned his teeth in vengeance on himself. We left him there so that I can say no more to him, but a sound of wailing assailed on my ears, so that I turned my gaze in front intently. The kind master said, "Now, my son, we approach the city they call Dis, with its grave citizens, a vast crowd. And I, master, can I already see its towers clearly there in the valley, glowing red, as if they issued from the fire, and he to me, the eternal fire that burns them from within, makes them appear reddened, as you see in this deep hell." We now arrived in the steep ditch that forms the moat to the joyless city. The walls seemed to me as if they were made of iron. Not until we had made a wide circuit did we reach a place where the ferryman said to us, "Disembark, here is the entrance." I saw more than 1,000 of those angels that fell from heaven like rain above the gates, who cried angrily, "Who is this that without death goes through the kingdom of the dead?" And my wise master made a sign to them of wishing to speak in private. Then they furled their great disdain and said, "Come on alone and let him go. Who enters this kingdom with such audacity? Let him return alone on his foolish road. See if he can, and you remain who have escorted him through so dark a land. Think, reader, whether I was not disheartened at the sound of those accursed words. Not believing I could ever return here, I said, "Oh, my dear guide, who has ensured my safety more than the 7 times and snatched me from certain danger that faced me. Do not leave me so helpless. And if we are prevented from going on, let us quickly retrace our steps." And that Lord who had led me there said to me, "Have no fear. Since no one can deny us passage, it is given us by so great an authority. But you wait for me, and comfort and nourish your spirit with the fresh hope, for I will not abandon you in the lower world." It's like one of those drawings you could just like stare at for like 15 minutes, but we're reading a book, so. So the gentle farther goes and leaves them there. I am left in doubt, since yes and no war inside my head. I could not hear what terms he offered them, but he had not been standing there long with them. When each vying with the other, they rushed back. Our adversaries closed the gate in my lord's face. Leaving him outside, he turned to me again with slow steps. His eyes were on the ground, and his expression devoid of all daring. And he said, sighing, "Oh, are those who deny me entrance to the house of pain?" And to me he said, "Though I am angered, do not you be dismayed. I will win the trial, whatever obstacle those inside contrive. This insolence of theirs is nothing new, for they displayed it once before at the less secret gate we passed. That was has remained unbarred. Over it you saw the fatal writing, and already on this side of its entrance one is coming down the steep, passing the circles unescorted, one for whom the city shall open to us. The color that cowardice had printed on my face, seeing my guide turn back, made him repress his own heightened color more swiftly. He stopped, attentive like one who listens, since his eyes could not penetrate far through the black air, the thick fog. Nevertheless, we must win the struggle. He began, if not, then help such as this was offered to us. Oh, how long it seemed to me that others coming. I saw clearly how he hid the meaning of this opening words with their sequel, words differing from his initial thought. Nonetheless, his speech made me afraid. Perhaps because I took his open, broken phrases to hold a worse meaning than they did. Do any of those whose only punishment is deprivation of hope ever descend into the depths of this sad chasm from the inner circle? I asked this question and he answered me. It rarely happens that any of us make the journey that I go on. It is true that I was down here once before, conjured to do so by the fierce sorceress Erexitho, who recalled spirits to their corpses. My flesh had only been stripped from me a while when she forced me to enter inside that wall to bring a spirit out of the circle of Judas. That is the deepest place and the darkest and the furthest from that heaven that surrounds all things. I know the way well, so be rest assured. This marsh that breathes its foul stench circles the woeful city around about, where we also cannot enter now without anger. And he said more that I do not remember, because my eyes had been drawn to the high tower, with the glowing crest, where in an instant 3 hellish furies, stained with blood, had risen, that had the limbs and aspects of women, covered with a tangle of green hydras, their hideous foreheads bound with little adders and horned vipers, and Virgil, who knew the handmaids of the queen of eternal sadness well, said to me, "See the fierce Irenes." That is Megaera on the left. The one that weeps on the right is Alceto, and Tisphone is in the middle. Then he was silent. Each one was tearing at her breast with her claws. Sounds very feminist. Beating with her hands and crying out so loudly that I pressed close to the poet out of fear. "Let Medusa come," they all said, looking down on us, "so that we can turn him to stone." We did not fully revenge Theseus' attack. "Turn your back," said the master, and he himself turned me around. "Keep your eyes closed, since there will be no return upwards. If she were to show herself, and you were to see her, not leaving it to me, he covered them, also with his own hands. O you who have clear minds, take note of the meaning that conceals itself under the veil of clouded verse. Now, over the turrid waves, there came a fearful crash of sound, at which both shores trembled. A sound like a strong wind born of conflicting heat that strikes the forest remorse, remorsefully, breaks the branches and beats them down and carries them away, advances proudly in a cloud of dust, and makes wild creatures and shepherds run for safety. Virgil uncovered my eyes and said, "Now direct your vision to that ancient marsh, there where the mists are thickest, like frogs that all scatter through the water, in front of their enemy, the snake, until each one squats on the bottom." So I made more than 1,000 damaged spirits scatter in front of one who passed the Stygian ferry with dry feet. He waved that putrid air from his face, often waving his left hand before it, and only that annoyance seemed to weary him. I well knew he was a messenger from heaven, and I turned to the master, who made a gesture that I should stay quiet and bow to him. How full of indignation he seemed to me. He reached the gate, opened it with a wand. There was no resistance. On the vile threshold, he began to speak. "O cast from heaven, outcast from heaven, why does this insolence still live in you? Why are you recalcitrant?" What's that word mean? Having an obstinately uncooperative attitude toward authority or discipline. Recalcitrant. I'm probably still saying it wrong. Recalcitrant. Recalcitrant. Okay. Having an abstainingly uncooperative attitude toward authority or discipline. That is a good word right there. Recalcitrant. Okay. Why are you recalcitrant to that will, whose aims can never be frustrated, and that has often increased your torment? What use is it to butt your heads against the fates? If you remember, your Cerebrus still shows a throat and chin scarred by doing so. Then he returned over the merry pool and spoke no words to us, but looked like one preoccupied and driven by other cares than of those who stood before him. And we stirred our feet towards the city in safety after his sacred speech. We entered Dis without a conflict, and I gazed around as soon as I was inside, eager to know what punishment the place enclosed, and saw on all sides a vast plain of pain and vile torment. As at Arles, where the Rhone stagnates, or Pola, near the Gulf of Quarano, that confines Italy and bathes its coast, the spectres make the ground uneven. So they did here, all around, only here the nature of it was more terrible. Flames were scattered amongst the tombs, by which they were made so red hot all over, that no smith's art needs hotter metal. Their lid were all lifted, and such fierce groans came from them that indeed they seemed to be those of the sad and wounded. And I said, Master, who are these people entombed in those vaults, who make themselves known by tormented sighting? And he to me, here are the arch heretics with their followers of every sect, and the tombs contain many more than you might think. Here, like is buried with like, the monuments deferred in decree's heat. Then, after turning to the right, we passed between the tormented and the steep ramparts. I'm actually going to save that. Half of my tweets are just sharing artwork or just random quotes that I like. It's what's Twitter for, right? Okay, let me take a drink. Okay, let's continue. Well, we're about a third of the way through, and we're at 20 minutes, so we're doing good. Now my master goes, and I behind him by a secret path between the city walls and the torments. I began, O summit of virtue, who leads me round through the circles of sin. As you please, speak to me, and satisfy my longing. Can those people who lie in the spleckers be seen? The lids are all raised, and no one keeps guard. And he to me, they will all be shut when they return here from Jehoshaphat with the bodies they left above. In this place of Epicurus and all his followers are entombed, who say the soul dies with the body. Therefore, you will soon be satisfied with an answer to the question that you asked me, and also the longing that you hide from me here inside. And I, kind guide, I do not keep my heart hidden from you, except by speaking too briefly something to which you have previously inclined me. O Tuscan, who goes alive through the city by fire, speaking so politely, may it please you to rest in this place. Your speech shows clearly you are a native of that noble city, that I perhaps trouble too much. This sound came suddenly from one of the vaults, at which in fear I drew a little closer to my guide. And he said to me, "Turn around. What are you doing? Look at Fartina, who has raised himself. You can see him all from the waist up." It's really interesting. You got to love artwork because you'll read something like this and you have your own depiction in your head, right? And then you see an actual artist's depiction and you go, wow, okay, that's not what I had, but I can honestly see where the artist drew the inspiration from, and now we have it. I had already fixed my gaze on him, and he rose erect in stance and aspect, as if he had held the Inferno in great disdain. The spirit and eager hands of my guide pushed me through the splunkers towards him, saying, "Make sure your words are measured." When I was at the base of the tomb, Faritina looked at me for a while, and then almost contemptuously he demanded of me, "Who were your ancestors?" I, desiring to obey, concealed nothing, but revealed the whole to him, at which he raised his brows a little and said, "They were fiercely opposed to me and my ancestors and my party, so that I scattered them twice." I replied, "Though they were driven out, they returned from wherever they were, the first and the second time, but your party have not yet learnt that skill." Then a shadow rose behind him from an unclosed space, visible down to the tip of its chin. I think it had raised itself on its knees. It gazed around me as if it were wished to see whether anyone was with me. But when all its hopes were quenched, it said, weeping, "If by power of intellect you go through this blind prison, where is my son? And why is he not with you?" And I to him, "I do not come through my own initiative. If he that waits there, whom your Gudio disdained perhaps, leads me through this place." His words and the nature of his punishment had spelt his name to me, so that my answer was full one. Suddenly raising himself erect, he cried, "What did you say? Disdained? Is he not still alive? Does the sweet light not strike his eyes?" When he saw that I delayed in answering, he dropped supplying again and showed himself no more. But the other one, at whose wish I had first stopped, generously did not alter his aspect or move his neck or turn his side. Continuing his previous words, he said, "And if my party have learnt that art of return badly, it tortures me more than his bed. But the face of the moon goddess, Para, Paris, Persephone, 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 I'm probably saying that wrong. Persephone, that's what we're going with though, who rules here, will not be crescent 50 times before you learn the difficulty of that art. And as you wish to return to the sweet world, tell me why that person is so fierce toward my kin in all its lawmaking." At which I answered him, "The great slaughter and havoc that dyed the Arabia red is the cause of those indictments against them in our churches." Then he shook his head, sighing, and said, "I was not alone in that matter, nor would I have joined with the others without good cause. But I was alone there when all agreed to raze Florence to the ground, and I openly defended her." So we're at 30 minutes and we're basically at halfway. Ah, as I hope your descendants might someday or sometime have peace, I begged him, solve the puzzle that has entangled my mind. It seems, if I hear right, that you see beforehand what time brings, but have a different knowledge of the present, like one who has imperfect vision. He said, we see things that are distant from us. So much of the light the Supreme Lord still allows. But when they approach or come to be, our intelligence is wholly void, and we know nothing of your human state except what others tell us. So you may understand that all our knowledge of the future will end from the moment when the day of judgment closes the gate of futurity, futurity, what? Futurity, future time, futurity. Then, as if conscious of guilt, I said, will you therefore tell the fallen one now that his son is still joined to the living? And if I was silent before in reply, let him know it was because my thoughts were already entangled in that error you have resolved for me. And now my master was recalling me, at which I begged the spirit with more haste to tell me who was with him. He said to me, I lie here with more than 1,000. Here inside is Frederick II and the Cardinal Ubaldini, and of the rest I am silent. At that he hid himself, and I turned my steps towards the poet of iniquity, reflecting on the words that boded trouble for me. Virgil moved on, and then, as we were leaving, said to me, why are you so bewildered? The reason I'm laughing is there's a professional wrestler named Virgil, and when I said Virgil, I thought of that person. Um, and I satisfied his question. The sage extorted me. Let your mind retrain what you have heard of your fate. And note this. And he raised his finger. When you stand before the sweet rays of that lady, whose bright eyes see everything, you will learn the journey of your life through her. Then he turned his feet towards the left. We abandoned the wall and we went towards the middle by a path that makes its way into a valley that, even up there, forced us to breathe its foulness. On the edge of the high bank, made of great broken rocks, in a circle, we came above a still more cruel crowd. And here, because of the repulsive, excessive stench that the deep abyss throws out, we approach it in the shelter of a grand monument, on which I saw an inscription that said, I hold Anastasius and Fontanius drew away from the true path. Mm-hmm. Oh boy, that's a lot. The master said, we must delay our descent until our senses is somewhat used to the foul wind. Okay. And then we will not notice it. Basically, let's get used to the farts and then we'll continue. I said to him, find us something to compensate so that the time is not wasted. And he, see, I have thought of it, he began. My son, within these walls of stone are 3 graduated circles like those you are leaving. They are all filled with accursed spirits, but so that the sight of them may be enough to inform you, in future, listen how why they are constrained. The outcome of all maliciousness the, that heaven hates is harm, and every such outcome hurts others either by force or deceit. But because deceit is a vice particular to human beings, it displeases God more, and therefore the fraudulent are placed below, and more pain grieves them. Whole of the seventh circle is for the violent. But since violence can be done to three persons, it is constructed and divided into three rings. I say violence may be done to God, or to oneself, or to one's neighbor, and their person or possessions, as you will hear in clear discourse. Death or painful wounds may be inflicted on one's neighbor, and devastation, fire, and pillage on his substance. Therefore, the first ring torments all homicides, everyone who lashes out maliciously, and thieves and robbers in their diverse groups. A man may do violence to himself and to his property, and so, in the second ring, all must repent in vain, who deprive themselves of your world, or gamble away and dissipate their wealth, or weep there when they should be happy. Violence may be done against the deity, denying himself and blaspheming in the heart, and scorning nature and her gifts. And so the smallest ring stamps with its seal both Sodom and cohorts, and those who speak scornfully of God in their hearts. Human beings may practice deceit, which gnaws at every conscience. One on one who trusts them, or on one who place no trust. This later form of fraud only severs the bond of that nature created. And so, in the eighth circle are nested hypocrisy, sorcery, flattery, cheating, theft, and selling of holy orders, pimps, corrupters of public office, and similar filth. I'm going to save that one. I like that. In the previous form, that love that nature creates is forgotten, and also that which is added later, giving rise to special trust. So, in the ninth circle, the smallest circle, at the base of the universe where Dis has his throne, every traitor is consumed eternally. And I said, Master, your reasoning proceeds most clearly and lays out excellently this gulf and those that populate it. But tell me, why those of the great marsh, those whom the wind drives and the rain beats, and those who come together with sharp words are not punished in the burning city if God's anger is directed towards them? And if not, why they are in such a state? And he to me, why does your mind err so much more than usual? Or are your thoughts somewhere else? Do you not remember the words with which your Aristotelian ethics speak of the three natures that heaven does not will: incontinence, malice, and mad brutishness, and how incontinence offends God less and incurs less blame? If you consider this doctrine correctly and recall to mind who those are that suffer punishment out there above, you will see easily why they are separated from these destructive spirits, and why divine justice strikes them with less anger. I said, O son, the heals all troubled sight. You make me so content when you explain it to me, that to question is as delightful as to know. Go back a moment to where you said that Ursary defends divine goodness, and unravel that knot. He said to me, to whom attends philosophy shows in more than one place how nature takes her path from the divine intelligence and its arts, and if you note your physics well, you will find not many pages in that art follows her as well as it can, as the pupil does the master, so that your art is as it were the grandchild of God. By these two, art and nature must earn his bread and flourish. If you recall to mind Genesis near its beginning, because the usurer holds to another course, he denies nature in herself, in that which follows her ways, putting his hopes elsewhere. But follow me now by the path I choose, for Pisces quivers on the horizon, and all Bootsys covers Caruus, the northwest wind, and over there, some way, we descend the cliff. The Minotaur, yes. The place we reached to climb down the bank was craggy, and because of the creature there, also a path with every eye would shun. The descent of the rocky Prius was like the landslide that struck the left bank of the Adgag. This side Trento caused an earthquake or faulty buttress, since the rock was so shattered from the summit of the mountain, where it started, to the plain. And it might form a route for someone above, and at the top of the broken gully, the infamy of Crete, the Minotaur, conceived on Pasiphae on the wooden cow, lay stretched out. When he saw us, he gnawed himself like someone consumed by anger inside. My wise guide called to him. Perhaps you think that Theseus, the Duke of Athens, is here, who brought about your death in the world above. Leave here, monstrous creature. This man does not come here, aided by your sister Anadrene, but passes through to see the punishments. Like a bull breaking loose at the moment when it receives the fatal blow that cannot go forward, he plunges here and there. So I saw the Minotaur, and my cautious guide cried, run to the passage, while he is in a fury. It is time for you to descend. All right, so we're almost 45 minutes, and we're roughly 3/4 of the way through. So we made our way downwards over the landslide of stones that often shifted beneath my feet. From the unaccustomed weight, I went thoughtfully, and he said, perhaps you are contemplating this fallen mass of rock, guarded by the bestial anger that I quelled a moment ago. I would have you know that the previous time I came down here to the deep Inferno, the spill had not yet fallen. But if I discern the truth, the deep and loathsome valley shook not long before he came to take the great ones to the highest circle, so that I thought the universe thrilled with love, by which, as some believe, the world has often been overwhelmed by chaos. On the moment, ancient rocks here and elsewhere tumbled. But fix your gaze on the valley, because we are near the river of blood, in which those who injure others by violence are boiled. I'm guessing that's Jesus. I was guessing so because it's, a pronoun and then it's capitalized. Okay. Let's continue on. blind desires, evil and foolish, which so goad us in our brief life, and then in the eternal one ruin us so bitterly. I saw a wide carnel bent in an arc, looking as if it surrounded the whole plain. From what my guide had told me, centaurs were racing, one behind another, between it and the foot of the bank, armed with weapons as they were accustomed to hunt on earth. Seeing us descend, they all stood still, and three elected leaders from the group, armed with bows and spears, and one of them shouted from the distance, "What torment do you come for? You that descend the rampart, speak from there. If not, I draw the bow." My master said, "We will make our reply to Chiron, who is there nearby." Sadly, the nature was always rash. Then he touched me and said, "That is Nisus, who died because of his theft of the lovely Deianira, and for his blood took vengeance through his blood." I feel like there's a whole story that you could read just about that paragraph. "He in the center, whose head is bowed to his chest, is the great Cheiron, who nursed Achilles. The other is Pholoeus, who was full of rage." I just thought of the Smashing Pumpkins saying, "They raced around the ditch in thousands, piercing with arrows any spirit that climbs further from the blood than its guilt has condemned to it. We drew near the swift creatures. Chirion took an arrow and pushed back his beard from his face with the not flight. When he had uncovered his huge mouth, he said to his companions, 'Have you ever noticed that the one behind moves whatever he touches? The feet of dead men do not normally do so.' And my good guide, who was by Chirion's front part, where the two natures join, replied, 'He is truly alive and alone. I have to show him the dark valley. Necessity brings him here, and not desire. She who gave me this new duty came from singing alleluias. He is no thief, nor am I a wicked spirit. But by that virtue, by means of which I set my feet on so unsafe a path, lend us one of your people whom we can follow, so that he may show us where the ford is, and carry this one over to his back, since he cannot fly as a spirit through the air.' Cheiron twisted to his right and said to Narcissus, 'Turn and guide them, then, and if another crew meet you, keep them off.'" Excuse me. We moved onwards with our trustworthy guide along the margin of crimson boiling, in which the boiled were shrieking loudly. I saw people immersed as far as the eyebrows, and the great centaur said, "These tyrants who indulged in blood and rapine, rapine. What's rapine? Come on. Rapine. Violent seizure of someone's property. Okay, so you're robbing them basically. Here they lament their offenses done without mercy. Here is Alexander and the fierce Dionysus of Syracuse, who gave Sicily years of pain. That head of black hair is Azanio, and the other one, which is blonde, is Abizano de Este, whose life was quenched in truth by his stepson up in the world. Then I turned to the poet, and he said, "Let him guide you first, now, and I second." A little further on, Narcissus paused next to people who seemed to be sunk in the boiling stream up to their throat. He showed us a shade, apart by itself, that one, Guy de Montfort, in God's church, pierced that heart that is still venerated by the Thames. Then I saw others who held their heads and all their chests likewise free of the river, and I knew many of these. So the blood grew shallower and shallower until only cooked their feet. And here was our ford through the ditch. The centaur said, as you see the boiling stream continually diminishing on this side, so on the other it sings more and more, till it comes again to where tyrants are doomed and grieve. Divine justice here torments Attilia, the scourge of the earth, Farius and Sex Pompeius, and for eternity milk tears, produced by the boiling, from Reiner de Cornetio and Reiner Pazio, who made war on the highways. Then he turned back and recrossed the ford. Nasu had not yet returned to the other side. When we entered a wood unmarked by any path, the foliage was not green, but a dusky color. The branches were not smooth, but wrapped and knotted. There were no fruits there, but poisonous thorns. The wild beasts that hate the cultivated fields in the Tuscan Maremma between Seneca and Corneto have layers less thick and tangled. Here the brutish harpies make their nests, they who chased the Trojans from Strophanades with dismal pronouncements of future tribulations. I'm actually going to save that. They have broad wings and human necks and faces, clawed feet and large feathered bellies, and they make mournful cries in that strange wood. The kind master said, before you go further, be aware that you are in the second ring, and will be until you come to the dreadful sands. So look carefully, and you will see things that might make you mistrust my words. Already I heard sighs on every side, and saw no one to make them, at which I stood totally bewildered. I think that he thought I was thinking that many of those voices came from the trees, from people who hid themselves because of us. So the master said, if you break a little twig from one of these branches, the thoughts you will have to be seen to be in error. Then I stretched my hand out a little and broke a small branch with a large thorn, and its trunk cried out, why do you tear at me? And when it had grown dark with blood, it began to cry out again, why do you splinter me? Have you no breath of pity? We were men, and we are changed to trees. Truly, your hand would be more merciful if we were merely souls of snakes. That is like super cool. Super crazy. Okay, let's keep moving. Just as a green branch burning at one end spits and hisses with escaping air at the other, so from the broken wood blood and words come out together, at which I let the branch fall, and stood like a man afraid. My wise sage replied, Wounded spirit, if he had only believed before what he had read in my verse, he would not have lifted his hand to you. But the incredible nature of the thing made me urge him to do what grieves me. But tell him who you were, so that he might make some amends and renew your fame up in the world, to which he is allowed to return. The tree replied, You tempt me so with your sweet words that I cannot keep silent. But do not object if I am expansive in speech. I am Pierre Delele Vigny, who held both the keys of Frederick's heart and employed them, locking and unlocking, so quietly that I kept almost everyone else from his secrets. I was so faithful to that glorious office that through it I lost my sleep and my life. The whore that never turned her eyes from Caesar's household, envy and common disease, and vice of courts stirred all minds against me. And being stirred, they stirred Augustus, so that my fine honors were changed to grievous sorrows. My spirit, in a scornful mode, thinking to escape scorn by death, made me, though I was unjust to myself. By the strange roots of this tree, I swear to you, I never broke faith with my Lord, so worthy of honor. If either of you return to the world, raise and cherish the memory of me that still lies low from the blow envy gave me. The poet listened for a while, then said to me, Silence, he is silent. Since he is silent, do not lose the moment, but speak and ask him to tell you more. At which I said to him, You ask him further about what you think will interest me, because I could not, such pity fills my heart. So he continued, That the man may do freely what your words request from him. Imprisoned spirit, be pleased to tell us further how the spirits are caught in these knots, and tell us if you can whether any of them free themselves from these limbs. Then the trunk blew fiercely, and the breath was turned to words like these. My reply will be brief. When the savage spirit leaves the body from which it has ripped itself, Minos sends it to the seventh gulf. It falls into the wood, and no place is set for it. But whenever chance hurls it, there it sprouts like a grain of German wheat, shoots up as spaling, and then as a wild tree. The harpies feeding then on its leaves hurt it, and give an outlet to its hurt. Like the others, we shall go to the corpses of the day of judgment, but not so that any of us may inhabit them again, because it would not be just to have what we took from ourselves. We shall drag them here, and our bodies will be hung through the dismal wood, each on the thorn tree of its tormented shade. Oh, we're getting close. We're right at an hour, basically, and we're pretty much right at the end. Probably got 10 minutes left. We were still listening to the tree, thinking it might tell us more, when we were startled by a noise, like those who think the wild boar is nearing where they stand, and hear the animals, the crashing of branches. Behold, on the left, two naked torn spirits, running so hard they broke every thicket of the wood. The leader cried, Come, death, come now. And the other, Giacomo, who felt himself to be slow, cried, Lano, your legs were not so swift at the jousts of Topo. And since perhaps his breath was failing him, he merged himself with a brush. The wood behind them was filled with black bitch hounds, eager and quick as greyhounds, that have slipped the leash. They clamped their teeth into Lano, who squatted, and tore him bit by bit, then carried off his miserable limbs. My guide now took my hand and led me to the bush, which was grieving in vain through its bleeding splinters, crying, "Oh, Jamaco, the saint, Andrea, what have you gained by making me your screen? What blame do I have for your sinful life?" When the master had stopped next to it, he said, "Who were you that breathed out your mournful speech with blood through so many wounds? And heed us, you spirits, who have come to view the dishonorable mangling that has torn my leaves from me. Gather them around the foot of the sad tree. I was of Florence, that city which changed Mars its patron for St. John the Baptist, because of which that God, through his powers, will always make it sorrowful. Were it not that some fragments of his statue remain where Ponte Vecchio crosses the Arno, those citizens who rebuilt it on the Attilia left would have worked in vain. I made a gibbet for myself from my own roof beam. The violence against God. At the love of my native place stirred in me. I gathered up the sacred leaves and gave them back to him who was already hoarse. Then we came to the edge where the second round is divided from the third, where a fearsome form of justice is seen. To make these new things clear, I say we reached a plain where the land repels all vegetation. The mournful wood makes a circle around it, as the ditch surrounds the wood. Here we step close to its very rim. The ground was dark, thick sand, no different in form than that which Cato once trod. O God's vengeance, how what was shown to my sight should be feared by all who read. I saw many groups of naked spirits who were all moaning bitterly, and there seemed to be diverse rules applied to them. Some were lying face upward to the ground. Some sat all crouched, and others roamed around continuously. Those who moved were more numerous, and those who lay in torment forever were fewer, but uttering louder cries of pain. Dilated flakes of fire falling slowly like snow in the windless mountains rained down over the vast sands, like the flames of that Alexander saw falling in the hot zones of India all over his army until they reached the ground, fires that were more easily quenched while they were separate, so that his troops took care to trample the earth like those fell this eternal heat, kindling the sand like tinder beneath flint, and steel doubling the pain. The dance of their tortured hands was never still. Now here, now there, shaking off the fresh burning. That's another one that's pretty good. Oh, we're so close. I began, Master, you who overcome everything except the obdurate demons. What's obdurate? Let's see. Stubbornly refusing to change one's opinion or action. Obdurate. So I did say it right. that came out against us at the entrance to the gate. Who is that great spirit who seems indifferent to the fire and lies there scornful, contorted, so that the rain does not seem to deepen his repentance? And he himself, noting that I asked my guide about him, cried, "What I was when I was living, I am dead. Though Jupiter exhausts Vulcan, his blacksmith, from whom he took in anger the fierce lightning bolt, that I was struck down with that on my last day. And though he exhausts the others, the Cyclops, one by one, at the black forge of Athena, shouting, 'Help, help, good Vulcan,' just as he did at the battle of Phlegra between the gods and giants, and hurls his bolts at me with all his strength, he shall still not enjoy a true revenge." Then my guide spoke with a fierce I had not heard before. "O Coponius, you are punished more in that your pride is not quenched. No torment would produce pain fitting for your fury, except your own raving." Then he turned to me with gentler voice, saying, "That was one of the 7 kings who laid siege to Thebes, and he held God, and seems to hold him in disdain, and value him lightly. But as I told him, his spite is an ornament that fits his breast. Now follow me. Be careful not to place your feet yet on the burning sand, but always keep back close to the wood." He came in silence to the place where a little stream gushes from the wood, the redness of which still makes me shudder, like the rivulet that runs sulphur red with Balmacame spring near Viterbo, that the sinful women share among themselves. So this ran down over the sand. Its bed and both its slopping banks were petrified, and its nearby margins, so that I realized our way lay there. Among all the other things that I have shown you since we entered through the gate, whose threshold is denied to no one, your eyes have seen nothing as noteworthy as this present stream that quenches all the flames over it. These were my guide's words, at which I begged him to grant me food, for which he had given me the appetite. Then he said, "There is a deserted island in the middle of the sea, named Crete, under whose king Saturn the world was pure. There is a mountain there called Idia, which was once gladdened with waters and vegetation, and now is abandoned like an ancient spoil heap. Rhea chose it once with the trusted cradle of her son, and the better to hide him when he wept, caused loud shouts of echo from it. Inside the mountain, a great old man stands erect with his shoulders turned towards Egyptian Damatea, and looked at Rome as if it were his mirror. His head is formed of pure gold, his arms and his breasts are refined silver. Then he is bronze as far as the thighs. Downward from there, he is all the choice iron, except for the right foot is baked clay, and more of his weight is on that one than the other. Every part except the gold is cleft with the fissure that sheds tears, which collect the pierce the grotto. Their course falls from rock to rock in this valley. They form Archeon, Styx, and Phlogiatheon. Then by his narrow channel go down to where there is no further fall, and form Kaitos. You will see what kind of lake that is. So I will not describe it to you here. We're like so close. Okay, last paragraph. I'm perfect. I said 10 more minutes. I said to him, if the present stream flows down like that from our world, why does it only appear to us on his blank bank? And he to me, you know that you know the place is circular, and though you have come far, always to the left, descending to the depths, you have not yet turned through a complete round, so that if anything new appears to us, it should not bring an expression of wonder to your face. And I again, Master, where are Lethe and Pal we'll just skip that word, found, since you do not speak of the former, and say that the later is formed from these tears. He replied, please, you please me truly with all your questions, but the boiling red water might well answer to one of those you ask about. You will see Lethe but above this abyss. There on the mountain, or the mount, where the spirits go to purify themselves, when their guilt is absolved by the penitents. Then he said, now it is time to leave the wood. See that you follow me, the margins which are not burning form a path, and over them all the fire is quenched. Flathegethon. Phlegethian. Okay. Phlegethian. Okay. That's good. Okay. Yes, I feel good. We just made it past that one. I like it, and it only took us an hour. I think I'm going to pray a rosary, though. So I am going to first stop the camera, and I'll be back in 2.5 minutes.